The twin suns were dipping below the jagged horizon of Valira 9, casting long shadows across the crystalline forests. Each tree shimmered like a shard of glass, reflecting orange and violet streaks across the uneven ground. The air was thick with a strange, almost electric energy that made the hair on a human's arms stand on end. Kyle had never felt anything like it before. The planet was alive, not just with wildlife, but with something more ancient, more dangerous. He adjusted his pack and glanced at the tall figure beside him. Lyra, his fox-like companion, moved with grace that defied logic. Her fur was a deep, burnished copper, her eyes bright gold, alert and sharp. Her ears twitched at every sound, and her tail flicked in warning. She was always alert. But tonight, Kale could see her attention sharpening to a razor edge. Something in the air was calling to her, pulling at instincts that he did not understand. "Kale," she said, her voice low but commanding. "We need to move faster. The cycle is starting." Kale frowned. He had only recently learned what the locals called the cycle. Valira 9's twin moons caused massive energy surges across the planet every few years. The flora and fauna reacted violently. Animals became aggressive, plants released hallucinogenic spores, and even the ground itself sometimes shook as if angry. It was dangerous, yes, but it was also beautiful in a terrifying way. "I know," Kale replied, though his voice lacked conviction. "But we can't rush blindly into the forest." The creatures, before he could finish, a low growl rolled through the trees. Lyra stiffened instantly, her body coiling like a spring. She let out a sharp warning bark and then, without a moment's hesitation, lunged forward, knocking Kale to the ground. "Lyra, what?" Kale scrambled to his feet, but she had already darted ahead, moving with uncanny speed. Her movements were not random. She was tracking something or someone. Kale followed, trying to match her pace. His lungs burned in the thin, electrified air. The forest was alive with strange noises, twigs snapping, leaves rustling, and distant screeches that seemed to echo from nowhere. Every step forward made Kale's heart beat faster. He trusted Lyra's instincts more than anything else, but the intensity of her behavior tonight was unlike anything he had ever seen. "Stay close," she commanded, glancing back at him briefly. Her voice carried an authority that made him obey without question. They reached a clearing where the crystalline trees arched high, their tops bending toward each other to form a natural dome. The light of the twin suns filtered through, scattering into hundreds of colors across the ground. At first, everything seemed calm, almost peaceful. Then Kale saw it. The energy. The ground was vibrating subtly, almost like it had a heartbeat. Sparks of light danced across the surface, forming intricate patterns that shifted and shimmered as if alive. Kale took a cautious step forward, feeling a tingle along his skin. "Be careful," Lyra warned, her ears flattening slightly. She crouched low, tail twitching. "This energy, it doesn't just make the animals dangerous. It changes them. It makes them unpredictable." Kale swallowed hard. He had read about Valira 9's cycles in old space logs, but nothing compared to experiencing it firsthand. The logs described heightened aggression and sensory anomalies, but that sounded clinical. What he felt now was chaos. The forest pulsed with it, and Lyra was a creature perfectly tuned to sense every fluctuation. Suddenly, a shadow moved across the edge of the clearing. Kale froze. Lyra's fur bristled, and her tail lashed sharply. A massive creature stepped into view. Its body was covered in armored scales that reflected the sun's light like liquid metal. Eyes, too many to count, glimmered from its head, and claws dug into the ground, leaving deep marks. Kale wanted to speak, to warn it that he meant no harm. But Lyra growled, a low, threatening sound that vibrated through the clearing. She moved in front of him protectively, her stance aggressive, fur bristling. Kyle realized then that Lyra wasn't just acting on instinct, she was claiming him. The energy of the cycle had triggered something ancient in her species, a protective drive that made her hyper-aware of potential threats. It was terrifying and awe-inspiring at the same time. The creature tilted its head, as if studying them, but did not advance. Lyra's eyes narrowed. She let out another growl, louder this time, warning it away. Kael noticed her tail wrapping around his legs in a protective gesture. Almost like a shield. "It's not trying to attack us. Yet," he whispered, more to himself than to her. But Lyra did not relax. She crouched lower, muscles tensed, ready to spring at the slightest movement. Kael realized that even though she was a companion, a friend, she was also a warrior of her kind, and tonight, the cycle had awoken the warrior in her fully. For hours they moved deeper into the forest. The trees grew taller, their crystalline branches forming twisting corridors. The air shimmered with energy, and strange bioluminescent plants pulsed in rhythm with the ground. Kael had to stay alert. Not just for himself, but for Lyra. He could feel her tension radiating through the slight brush of her fur when he touched her arm. They encountered other creatures, some small, darting like shadows, others massive, their eyes glowing in the dark. Lyra never hesitated. She protected Kael, intercepting creatures before they could reach him, often forcing him to stumble behind her as she moved with impossible speed and precision. By the time the twin suns vanished completely, replaced by the eerie glow of the moons, Kael was exhausted. Lyra, however, remained vigilant, her golden eyes scanning every shadow. Finally, they reached a natural plateau, overlooking a valley that stretched as far as Kael could see. The forest below shimmered with energy. Small, glowing creatures moved among the trees, while larger beasts patrolled like silent sentinels. Kael sank to the ground, breathing heavily. "I don't know how you do this," he said. "I'm barely keeping up, and you're like you're born for this." Lyra stepped beside him, lowering her stance but still alert. She nudged his shoulder gently, a small gesture of reassurance. "You need to understand something," she said quietly. "This planet, its cycles, they bring out the best in some, the worst in others. I am connected to it. I can sense the danger before it reaches us. That is why I protect you. That is why I will not let anyone or anything take you from me." Kael looked into her eyes and saw not just loyalty, but something older, primal, and unbreakable. He understood then that Lyra's instincts were not just her own. They were part of a bond that transcended species. A link forged by survival, trust, and respect. The night deepened, and the forest seemed to breathe around them. Kael felt a mix of awe and fear, realizing just how small and fragile humans could feel on a planet like this. But beside him, Lyra was a force of nature. She was the reason he could stand here at all, and in that moment, he knew that whatever this cycle brought, whatever dangers lurked in the crystalline forest, they would face it together. Not because they were invincible, but because they belonged to each other in a way that defied words. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it scents and sounds that made Lyra growl softly. Kael felt the tingle of danger in his own skin. The cycle had only just begun. Somewhere in the distance, a creature roared a sound that shook the ground beneath them. Kael tensed, ready for anything. But Lyra placed a reassuring paw on his shoulder. She would face it first. She would protect him. She had claimed him in a way no creature, no hazard, could ever undo. And in the heart of the dangerous, beautiful, alive planet, Kael realized something he had never truly known before. Survival was not just about strength. It was about trust, about bonds, about standing together when everything else tried to tear you apart. Tonight, in the electric forest of Valeera 9, Kael understood that Lyra was more than a companion. She was a guardian, a warrior, and in the heart of the cycle, she was everything he could rely on. As the first shimmer of the moon's energy streaked across the sky, Kael prepared himself. This was only the beginning. The cycle had awakened, and the forest was alive with intent. The wind shifted suddenly, carrying with it a sharp, metallic scent. Kael's stomach tightened. He had felt danger before, but the air now thrummed with it, an energy that made his skin crawl. Lyra's ears twitched violently, her golden eyes scanning every shadow. Her tail lashed with warning, and her body was a taut coil of muscle and fur. "Kale," she said, voice low and urgent. "We need to move. Something is coming. And it's not one of the usual forest creatures." Kale struggled to rise. His legs were stiff from the long trek through the crystalline forest, but he forced himself upright. The plateau they had reached in the evening now seemed less safe, the moonlight casting long, sinister shadows. He could see the valley below, glowing faintly with the strange bioluminescence of the forest. But what should have been beautiful now seemed ominous. Lyra darted down a narrow path that wound between the massive crystal-like trunks of the trees. Kale followed, trying to keep pace with her fluid, predatory movements. Every so often, he stumbled over roots or uneven ground, and each time, Lyra's paw lightly touched his shoulder, steadying him, urging him forward. She was not just fast, she was precise, moving in ways that defied gravity and logic. As they descended, Kale noticed the creatures in the forest had changed. Small animals that had been scurrying earlier now froze, staring at him with glowing eyes. Larger beasts crouched in the undergrowth, muscles taut, eyes fixed on the moving pair. It was as though the forest itself had shifted, responding to the cycle's energy, testing them. Kale swallowed hard. "Do you think it's the cycle itself?" he asked. Lyra glanced at him briefly, expression unreadable. "It's not just the cycle, it's the energy it releases. Everything here reacts to it differently. Some creatures grow stronger, faster. Others change. You have to stay close to me." Kale nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. Even though Lyra was capable of defending him, he knew he could not afford to fall behind. The forest was alive with invisible threats, and every moment of distraction could cost them dearly. They reached a narrow bridge of living crystal stretching over a deep chasm. The ground below shimmered with an otherworldly light. Kale stepped cautiously, testing each crystalline plank before putting his weight down fully. Lyra moved ahead with confidence, her movements almost dancing across the fragile surface. Suddenly, the chasm trembled. A creature burst from the depths below. A massive, armored being with limbs like jagged obsidian spikes. It roared, sending a shockwave of sound that rattled Kale's teeth and made his head spin. Lyra leapt into action without hesitation. She landed between Kale and the creature. Claws extended, fur bristling. The creature charged, but Lyra was faster. She sidestepped, snapping her claws at its legs and forcing it off balance. Kale's eyes widened. She wasn't just protecting him, she was orchestrating every movement, predicting the creature's attacks before they happened. Kale felt a surge of admiration and fear. Lyra's instincts were unmatched, and yet, she risked herself for him without question. "She's incredible," he muttered under his breath. The creature recovered, spinning to strike at Lyra. Kale grabbed a sturdy branch and hurled it with all his strength. It struck the creature's side, creating a distraction just long enough for Lyra to land a powerful blow to its chest. The beast roared in pain, stumbling back into the chasm, its body cracking against the crystalline walls. Lyra's chest heaved, but she remained alert. "Stay behind me," she warned, her tail sweeping across the bridge like a whip. Kale obeyed, feeling both helpless and amazed. They continued, moving through the dense forest. The bioluminescent plants glowed brighter as the night deepened, casting eerie shadows that made the forest seem alive with eyes. Kale noticed that the energy in the air was stronger now, crackling like static electricity. Each step felt like walking through a storm that only Lyra could navigate safely. Hours passed, though Kale couldn't be sure. The forest seemed timeless, stretching endlessly. Lyra occasionally paused, sniffing the air, listening to sounds imperceptible to human senses. Kale realized she wasn't just guiding him. She was reading the forest itself, understanding its moods, predicting danger before it happened. They reached a river of liquid crystal, its surface shimmering with the reflection of the moons. The water flowed with unnatural patterns, twisting and spiraling as if it had a mind of its own. Lyra approached cautiously, sniffing the air. Kale could feel the energy rising from the river, making the hairs on his arms stand on end. "This river is part of the cycle," Lyra said softly. "It's not dangerous by itself, but it attracts creatures, predators drawn to its energy. We need to cross carefully." Kale followed her lead. She found a narrow path along the edge, hopping from crystal outcrop to outcrop. Kale mimicked her movements, feeling the strange vibrations under his feet. Midway across, a ripple shot through the water, and a massive serpent-like creature lunged toward them, its scales reflecting the moonlight in blinding flashes. Lyra reacted instantly, leaping onto its head, claws sinking into its scales. It writhed violently, but she held on, twisting and turning with impossible agility. Kale froze for a moment, unsure if he should act. Then, he noticed the creature's underbelly exposed. Acting on instinct, he grabbed a sharp crystal shard from the riverbank and slashed at the vulnerable spot. The creature hissed and recoiled, giving Lyra the opening she needed. With a final strike, she pushed the beast back into the river, where it disappeared beneath the flowing crystals. Kale collapsed onto the riverbank, shaking. I don't know how you do that," he said, awe and exhaustion mixing in his voice. "I don't even know if I could survive here without you." Lyra stepped close, her golden eyes softening briefly. She nuzzled his shoulder. "You would survive," she said quietly. "You're human. You adapt. You endure. That is why you're valuable to this world, and why I protect you." Kale felt a warmth spread through him. It wasn't just admiration. It was trust, respect, and a bond that went deeper than words. He realized that their survival wasn't just about skill or instinct. It was about their partnership. Together, they could face anything the cycle threw at them. Night stretched on, and the forest grew more erratic. Strange lights danced through the trees, and distant roars echoed, sometimes close, sometimes far. Kale's senses were on high alert, but he found solace in Lyra's presence. He had read about humans forming bonds with alien species, but experiencing it firsthand was different. It was primal, instinctual, and undeniably strong. As they moved forward, the energy in the air surged again, stronger than before. The ground trembled, and a low hum resonated through the forest. Kale looked at Lyra, and she met his gaze with unwavering determination. "This is it," she said. "The peak of the cycle. We need to reach the sanctuary before the energy becomes uncontrollable. If we don't, everything in this forest will turn hostile, and survival will become nearly impossible." Kale nodded, steeling himself. The sanctuary was a place he had only heard of in fragments, a safe zone where the energy was contained, where travelers could rest and recover. But reaching it meant crossing the most dangerous parts of the forest, where the cycle's effects were strongest. They pressed on, moving through tunnels of crystalline growth that bent light in confusing patterns. Kale had to rely entirely on Lyra's guidance. Every so often, she would pause, ears twitching, eyes scanning, sensing threats before they appeared. Kale could see the subtle changes in her posture, the tension in her muscles, the way her tail moved like a radar. Suddenly, the forest erupted in chaos. Creatures of all shapes and sizes surged from the undergrowth, drawn to the energy in the air. Lyra sprang forward, intercepting each one with precise movements. Kale followed, using his wits and whatever tools he could find to help. He realized that survival here wasn't just about strength. It was about strategy, observation, and quick thinking. Hours passed like minutes. The sanctuary was close, though Kale could not see it yet. Exhaustion threatened to overwhelm him, but he kept moving, spurred on by the trust he had in Lyra and the bond they shared. The forest tested them at every step, but they adapted, overcame, and pressed forward. Finally, as the first light of the twin suns began to rise again, they reached the edge of the sanctuary. A shimmering barrier of energy protected it, glowing with a soft, steady light. Lyra paused, tail brushing Kale's side, eyes scanning the remaining forest. Then she nudged him forward. Kale stepped into the sanctuary, feeling immediate relief. The energy here was stable, contained. The dangerous effects of the cycle were dampened, and the forest beyond seemed distant, almost unreal. He turned to Lyra, gratitude and admiration filling him. "You kept me alive," he said simply. Lyra's ears twitched, and she gave a small, satisfied growl. "No. We kept each other alive. Remember that." Kale smiled, knowing she was right. Out here, on a strange, dangerous planet, in the middle of a chaotic cycle, they had survived together. And he realized something else, this bond, forged through danger, trust, and shared instinct, was something that no cycle, no creature, no force in the universe could ever break. The sanctuary glowed softly under the twin suns, a calm pocket in the chaos of Valeera 9. Kale took a deep breath, feeling the tension in his body ease just slightly. The forest outside still pulsed with energy, and he could sense the cycle raging beyond the barrier. But for now, they were safe. Lyra stood close, ears alert and eyes scanning the barrier, as if she could still detect threats beyond it. Her tail flicked in measured movements, a rhythm that seemed to calm Kale without him realizing it. The bond between them had deepened during the perilous journey through the forest. He trusted her instincts, and she trusted him to follow, to adapt, and to survive. "This sanctuary, it's more than a safe place," Lyra said quietly. "It's a hub for those who understand the cycle, who respect its power. There are others here, beings who have learned to survive where most would fail." Kale nodded, still taking in the soft hum of energy surrounding them. He had expected a simple refuge, a place to rest. But the sanctuary felt alive, like a living organism built to withstand the cycle. The walls were translucent, crystalline structures that pulsed gently, absorbing and redirecting the planet's chaotic energy. Even from inside, he could feel the difference. Lyra led him through narrow corridors of crystal, moving with precision as though she knew the sanctuary's layout instinctively. Kale followed, careful not to stumble over the uneven floors that shimmered under their feet. They reached a chamber filled with beings of various shapes and sizes. Some were humanoid, with subtle alien features. Others were quadrupedal or multi-limbed, their forms adapted to Valeera 9's harsh environment. One of the humanoids stepped forward, bowing slightly. "Welcome, travelers. You are safe here. For now." His voice was calm but firm, carrying a weight of authority. "The cycle is at its peak. Many will not survive the night outside. But here, you may prepare." "Anyone a sign of the 19? Kale glanced at Lyra, who nodded. "We've survived so far," he said quietly. "I think we can survive this too." The humanoid motioned toward a raised platform with various devices Kale did not recognize. Panels of glowing symbols shifted constantly, reacting to the energy in the sanctuary. "You must understand the cycle," he said. "It is not simply a natural phenomenon. It is a test, a challenge. Those who respect it, who adapt, thrive. Those who ignore it, fail. You are lucky your companion is special, but you must learn to work together, as one." Kale studied the panels, trying to comprehend their meaning. The energy outside was unpredictable. But here, it could be measured, monitored, and even influenced. He realized that the sanctuary was not just a safe zone, it was a place of learning, a place where survival skills could be sharpened into mastery. "Do you understand?" Lyra asked, tilting her head. Her eyes were sharp, attentive, waiting for his response. Kale nodded slowly. "I think I do. We survive by observing, by learning, and by trusting each other. I have to step up. Not just follow you, but think for myself." The words felt heavier than he expected. Up until now, Lyra had been the dominant force in their survival, guiding them through dangers he could barely comprehend. But here, in the sanctuary, he sensed that he could grow, that he could contribute in ways beyond physical protection. As if on cue, an alarm sounded, a low, resonant hum that shook the walls slightly. The glowing panels shifted violently, displaying chaotic patterns of energy. Lyra's ears twitched sharply, and she growled low in her throat. "What's happening?" Kale asked, stepping closer to one of the panels. The humanoid raised a hand. "The cycle is entering its final phase. The energy outside is surging. If it breaches the barrier, the sanctuary will hold, but only temporarily. You must act. You must learn to manipulate the energy, to guide it, or risk losing everything outside." Kale's heart pounded. "Manipulate it? How?" "Observe, understand, adapt," the humanoid replied simply. "The cycle is alive. It responds to intent and focus. Work together, human and foxborn. The bond you share is key. You must synchronize your instincts with thought." Kale looked at Lyra. She crouched slightly, tail sweeping the ground, eyes narrowing. Her instincts were already in tune with the energy outside. He realized that to survive the next stage, he could not rely solely on strength. He had to think, to plan, to act with precision alongside her. He placed a hand on one of the panels, feeling a faint vibration travel through him. Lyra mirrored the movement, placing a paw lightly next to his. Instantly, the energy responded, shifting in subtle waves. Kale's mind raced, trying to interpret the patterns. Colors, vibrations, and pulses all signaled the flow of power. If he could direct it, they could stabilize the forest outside, or at least mitigate the cycle's most dangerous effects. "Focus," Lyra whispered. "Sense it, feel it, don't fight it, guide it." Kale closed his eyes, concentrating. He imagined the energy as a river, wild and fast. He envisioned it flowing calmly around obstacles, guided by intention. Lyra's instincts merged with his thought, her movements subtle but precise, her claws brushing lightly over the crystalline panels in perfect timing. The first surge hit. The sanctuary trembled, and the panels flickered violently. Kale's stomach dropped, but he steadied himself, letting Lyra's rhythm guide his actions. The energy responded, flowing around them, shifting patterns, stabilizing. He could feel the forest outside pulsing less violently. "You're doing it!" Lyra's voice was low but full of approval. "Keep going." Kale pushed further, experimenting, adjusting, learning. The panels hummed beneath their hands and paws, translating their joint effort into real effects outside. Trees that had threatened to collapse bent harmlessly. Creatures that had charged now paused, confused by the stabilization. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time felt distorted in the sanctuary. KL was exhausted, sweat dripping down his face, muscles burning. Yet he kept going, guided by instinct, thought, and the bond he shared with Lyra. She moved seamlessly with him, anticipating every action, enhancing every decision. Finally, a calm settled over the sanctuary. The panels stabilized, the hum softened, and a sense of quiet pervaded the air. KL opened his eyes, seeing the subtle shimmer of order spread through the forest outside. The energy had calmed, controlled, not conquered, but guided. Survival was possible. Lyra pressed against his side briefly, a silent acknowledgement of his growth. "You did well," she said softly. "Not perfect, but well. You are learning. That is what matters." Kale allowed himself a small smile. "I couldn't have done it without you," he admitted. "No," Lyra corrected gently. "You could. But together, we are stronger. Remember that." The humanoid who had guided them stepped forward, nodding in approval. "You have learned quickly. Most humans would fail entirely. But you, together, you have adapted. That is the essence of survival here. That is HFY." Kale felt a surge of pride, but he also felt the weight of responsibility. The cycle was not over. The forest outside still pulsed with energy, and they would face its challenges again. But now he knew something crucial. Human ingenuity, coupled with trust and partnership, could stand alongside alien instinct. They were not powerless. They could shape their destiny. As dawn broke across Valera 9, painting the crystalline forest in gold and violet, Kale stepped outside the sanctuary briefly. The forest shimmered, alive but orderly. Creatures moved cautiously, no longer aggressive. The energy that had threatened them hours before now flowed predictably, controlled by the subtle guidance of their actions. He turned to Lyra, who followed close, tail swishing gently. Her eyes met his, and he understood her thoughts without words. This was only a moment of respite. The cycle would continue, but they had proven themselves capable. Together, they could face anything the planet threw at them. Kale realized that survival on Valira 9 was not about dominating the cycle, nor merely surviving its chaos. It was about adaptation, learning, and cooperation. It was about trusting instincts, alien and human alike, and using them in harmony. That was the HFY spirit he had been seeking. Resourcefulness, courage, and partnership. Lyra padded beside him, her presence a constant reassurance. Kale felt a surge of determination. The forest, the creatures, the cycles, they were all formidable. But he was human, and he could think, and with Lyra by his side, instinct and intellect combined, nothing could stop them. The day stretched before them, bright and promising. Kale and Lyra would continue their journey through the crystal forest, facing new challenges, learning more about the cycle, and growing stronger together. The bond between human and fox-born was now tested and strengthened, and Kale knew that their story was far from over. The cycle had been tamed, for now, but the universe had more tests ahead, and Kale was ready. Together with Lyra, he would face them all. And in the heart of Valira 9, amidst the living forest and shifting energies, Kale understood a truth that would guide him forever. Adaptation, courage, and trust were humanity's greatest weapons, and he was ready to use them. The sun hung low over the jagged horizon of Valira 9, casting long shadows through the crystalline forest. Kale and Lyra stood at the edge of the sanctuary, looking out over the valley below. The forest shimmered with energy, alive in a way that was both beautiful and terrifying. Even after their previous victories, Kale could feel the tension in the air. The final surge of the cycle was approaching, and it would test them like never before. "This is it," Lyra said, her golden eyes narrowing. Her ears twitched as she scanned the energy waves rippling across the forest. The cycle's peak. Everything we've faced so far was just preparation. Beyond this point, survival will demand everything we have. Kale took a deep breath. His muscles ached, and his mind was still adjusting to the intensity of the previous nights. But he felt ready. The sanctuary had taught him more than he could have imagined. He had learned to think, adapt, and act alongside Lyra, combining human ingenuity with alien instinct. Together, they were stronger than any challenge the forest could throw at them. Lyra led the way, moving with the same precision and grace that had saved them countless times. Kale followed closely, relying on her instincts while applying his own judgment. They passed towering crystalline trees, whose branches bent and shifted in response to the surging energy. Shadows moved unnaturally, and strange sounds echoed from unseen depths. Kale's heart pounded, but he trusted Lyra implicitly. Suddenly, the ground shook violently beneath their feet. A deep, resonant roar echoed through the forest, shaking loose crystals from the trees and sending smaller creatures scattering. Kale stumbled but caught himself, his eyes widening as he saw the source. A massive creature, larger and more fearsome than any they had encountered before, emerged from the shadows. Its body glimmered with energy, and its eyes burned like molten gold. Lyra crouched, tail lashing. "This is the apex," she warned. "It is the guardian of the cycle's energy. If it attacks, we must be precise. Hesitation will be fatal." Kale nodded, trying to steady his racing heart. He studied the creature, noticing the rhythm of its movements. The way its energy pulses matched the surging waves of the forest. He realized that brute force alone would not be enough. They would need to guide the energy around it, using the skills they had honed in the sanctuary. The creature lunged. Lyra was faster, sidestepping and delivering a precise strike that forced it back. Kale acted instinctively, adjusting the energy flow through his connection to the forest, sending subtle pulses that distracted and redirected the creature. It roared in frustration, but Kale could see that it was affected by their combined control. Lyra glanced at him, eyes meeting his. "Keep it steady. Focus your mind. Guide the energy." Kale closed his eyes, concentrating. He imagined the energy as a river, wild and chaotic, and envisioned channels that could direct it safely. Lyra moved in perfect sync, her instincts blending with his focus. Together, they manipulated the waves, guiding them around the apex creature, weakening its aggressive bursts without harming it. The forest trembled as the apex roared again, sending shockwaves through the valley. Kale's hands were sweating, his muscles straining from the effort of maintaining control. Yet he could feel the flow responding to his thoughts, bending to the harmony of their teamwork. He had never felt such power simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. Hours seemed to pass in minutes. The apex tested their limits, striking with immense force, its energy surging through the forest. Kale adapted, learning each pulse, each rhythm, and adjusting accordingly. Lyra mirrored his movements, striking with precision, intercepting the creature's attacks, and using her strength to protect him. Finally, the apex hesitated, sensing their mastery over the energy. Its roars became slower, less aggressive. Kale's confidence surged. He could guide it now, redirecting the wild energy of the forest around the creature, not against it. Slowly, deliberately, he calmed the flow, and the apex, sensing the stability, retreated into the shadows. Lyra lowered her stance, tail brushing the ground in relief. "You did it," she said quietly, pride in her voice. "We did it." Kale's chest heaved as he absorbed the magnitude of their victory. "We survived," he said, a smile spreading across his face. "Not just survived. We controlled it." Together, the forest around them seemed to sigh in response. The energy waves smoothed, the shimmering light of the crystals settling into a gentle rhythm. Creatures cautiously emerged from hiding, moving peacefully once more. The forest, once chaotic and dangerous, had returned to a controlled, stable state. Kale and Lyra walked through the valley, taking in the serene beauty. He marveled at the resilience of the forest, the creatures, and even himself. The cycle had tested them to the very edge, but it had also revealed their potential. Humans, with their ingenuity, adaptability, and courage, could stand alongside the most formidable alien instincts. Lyra's golden eyes scanned the horizon. "The cycle will end soon," she said, "but it will return. And when it does, we must be ready. You have grown, Kale. You have learned to adapt, to survive. And that is the essence of humanity on this planet." Kale nodded, understanding. The cycle was a challenge, a test of survival, and a lesson in partnership. He had been pushed beyond his limits, but he had also discovered the strength within himself. With Lyra by his side, instinct and intellect combined, they could face anything. As the first light of the twin suns fully illuminated the valley, Kale felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The forest glimmered with life, creatures moving freely among the crystalline trees, and the energy of the planet pulsed gently, no longer threatening but alive in harmony. He turned to Lyra, who stood beside him, tail flicking softly. "We've survived the cycle," he said, "and we've grown stronger for it." Lyra gave a small, satisfied growl. "Yes. And together, we will continue to grow. There will be new challenges, new cycles, but we will face them all as one." Kale smiled, feeling the bond between them stronger than ever. The forest had tested them, the apex had challenged them, and the cycle had pushed them to their limits. Yet here they were, victorious and united. He realized that survival on Velyra 9 was not just about physical strength, it was about adaptability, cooperation, and trust. The sanctuary's protective barrier glimmered in the distance, a reminder of the safe haven they had discovered. But Kale knew that the true strength came from within human determination, ingenuity, and the unbreakable partnership he shared with Lyra. They had faced the wildest energy of the forest, guided the apex creature, and emerged stronger than before. As the day progressed, Kale and Lyra continued exploring the valley, observing the forest's recovery and the creature's cautious return to normal patterns. Kale took careful notes, learning about the behavior of the fauna, the patterns of energy, and the ways in which the cycles affected the environment. He understood that knowledge, combined with action, would be their greatest weapon in the future. Lyra moved beside him silently, her instincts always alert. But now, there was a sense of calm between them, a mutual understanding that they had faced one of the greatest challenges of their lives and prevailed. Kale felt a surge of pride, not just in himself, but in humanity's potential to rise to the occasion, to adapt, and to survive in a universe full of unknown dangers. As the sun climbed higher, casting sharp, glittering reflections across the crystalline forest, Kale knew that their journey was far from over. The cycle would return, other challenges would arise, but they had proven that with courage, intelligence, and partnership, even the wildest forces of an alien world could be met and mastered. Lyra paused and looked up at him, her expression unreadable but warm. Kale understood her perfectly. Together, they would face every danger, every cycle, every challenge. Together, they were unstoppable. And in that moment, standing on the edge of the stabilized forest, Kale realized something profound. Humans were capable of more than survival. They were capable of mastery, adaptation, and greatness. With Lyra at his side, instinct and intellect united, there was no force in the universe they could not confront. The twin suns rose fully, illuminating the forest in brilliant light. Creatures moved freely, the energy pulses had returned to harmony, and the apex, once a terrifying guardian, now roamed peacefully in its domain. Kale felt a sense of peace, but also readiness. The cycle would return. But next time, he would be stronger, smarter, and even more prepared. He glanced at Lyra, and she met his gaze with silent acknowledgement. Words were not needed. They had survived the ultimate test, learned from it, and grown stronger together. The cycle had ended for now, but the bond between human and foxborn would endure, a living testament to the power of trust, partnership, and the spirit of survival. Kale took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the suns on his face, the gentle hum of the forest beneath his feet, and the steady presence of Lyra at his side. Together, they had faced chaos and emerged victorious. Together, they were unstoppable. And together, they would continue to explore, adapt, and thrive in the wondrous, dangerous world of Velyra 9. The cycle had ended. For now. But humanity, with courage, intellect, and trust, had proven that it could meet any challenge and prevail. Kale looked forward into the shimmering forest, a smile forming on his face. Whatever came next, he knew they would face it together, and that knowledge made him feel invincible.